Good day. I'm Paul Skelton, an endurance coach from Brisbane, Australia. I coach a fair amount of swimming along with other sports and do a lot of coaching in the pool, on pool deck. But I always recommend my swimmers spend some time in the open water. There's a couple of reasons for this. One, 80-20 training. We need to do a fair amount of aerobic training. As well as high intensity training to actually progress. Aerobic foundation is good. Doing aerobic foundation in the pool is pretty mundane. It's the black line, the wall, and doing low heart rate repeats. It takes time and it gets pretty boring in the pool. So doing it in open water creates some diversity. It allows us to stretch out a little bit, build up rhythm. Without the constant tumble turns. The other big benefit is getting back to nature. It's something that runners do, and even cyclists often with runners. Doing the work on the track, on the road, etc. is fine, but they always recommend we get out into the trails, back to nature, and just it makes it it's kind of combining fitness with play and mental relaxation. And I've always seen people progress pretty well when they actually get the combination of the two, the high intensity and the aerobic, without the boundaries, that rigor of the pool. It also gives us race specific training, particularly for triathletes. Now, if that's where we race, we should be getting a fair amount of time in the open water. It's just something to consider. Most of us have something available in our vicinity, whether it be lakes, reservoirs, open water, ocean, even rivers. And getting out there once in a while is always going to give you some benefits in terms of the diversity it gives you. There's a few things to consider when moving towards the open water. It is uncontrolled, and probably a little bit more risk in the pool. It's not always the same, it's probably a good idea to work with groups and get local knowledge when you're going into the open water. A couple of things to consider is, one, there's no black line and no wall, so your orientation skills and your navigation needs to be on point. It is open to the elements, so you're going to get wind, you're going to get currents and things like that, and you need to be aware. We need to be aware what's in that water, any creatures, seaweed, other craft, watercraft, etc. And we need to have adaptive skills. The big thing about open water is always changing. No two swims the same. And that's good, because anything that challenges us makes us stronger. And having skills diversity is always going to strengthen our mind as well as our bodies, and make us more adaptable to those swims that we enter where things don't go right, and be able to get through that and develop a mindset of resilience as well. No black line and no wall. It's funny when the first time I get swimmers in the open water who have been spending a lot of time in the pool, is orientation. They really battle to navigate, but it is an important skill. We need to get oriented in the water. We need to be able to swim straight. We need to be able to sight, and it takes practice. It's unfamiliar to pool swimmers, and I do spend a bit of time with my athletes just building up those skills. There's also collision risk. There's no controls. There's no lane ropes. Mostly in the open water, and there's always the chance, particularly when you're swimming with a group of people swimming into each other, and even people coming across people swimming the other way and having a head-on. So we need to be aware of what's going on around us and those controls. Hypoxia. Because there's no wall, what I find is novice swimmers, when they swim in the pool, may be actually going to oxygen deficit when they're swimming up the lane, and getting a couple of breaths at the wall when they turn and then swimming back, so that the recovery is at the wall. Now, obviously in open water there is no wall, So we need to get used to that, to swimming within ourselves, keeping current with our breathing, so we're not going into deficit, and it takes some getting used to. I always recommend in the pool that once people are competent, they do tumble turns, so they get out of that oxygen deficit syndrome or pattern. But open water, we have to fix that pretty much immediately. So we can do a kilometre at a time without stopping to catch up on our breath. And we need to build up that sustainable rhythm, that pattern that is just, we can just keep momentum and keep going in a comfortable manner. I always recommend, people new to upwater, you link up with a group that's been doing it for a while, that know the ropes and can provide you some guidance. Whether it's be a coach session or whether it's just a group of mates who are familiar with it and can just take you through those steps. They are skills that need to develop. We'll go through those a little bit later in this session. Elements, it is open to elements, open water. There's always the chance of wind, which creates chop. There's the chance of swell, particularly in the ocean, and rips and currents. And it's not just scare anybody, but you just need to be aware what's going on in the water and what the inherent dangers there may be around. Rips and currents, particularly on surf beaches, they are there, and working with locals or lifesaver staff, etc. Get to know what's going on, where it's safe to swim, and what's likely to happen in particular tides. There's the possibility of reefs. Nobody likes swimming into a shallow reef. Again, just orientation, read the signage, know what's going on. Swell and chop. So when the wind gets up, you can get a lot of chop and white caps on the water, even in the bigger lakes. And swimming in amongst chop is different to swimming in a pool. You can only potentially breathe to one side. You have to change your stroke to actually get through the trope. You might have to breathe a little bit higher. So you have to adapt to the conditions. Again, it's creating that diversity in your swimming and creating some strength and some resilience in your swimming. So when things aren't going your way, you can actually tend to push through. The other thing is the good old pool is generally about 26 to 28 degrees. In open water, in the winter it gets a lot colder than that, and can get a lot warmer during the summer. So you need to be sensitive and aware of the cold. Certainly when we get good open water swimmers can swim in pretty cold water without wetsuits as the channel swimmers. But maybe it's a good idea to get a wetsuit if you're new to open water and not used to those cold conditions. But you can condition for the cold. It's more a mindset and a confidence thing, swimming in the cold than a physical. Certainly with swell and chop, you need to learn to breathe on both sides equally competently, because if the wind's blowing from one side and you can't breathe to that side, you need to be able to be competent breathing on the other side. So there's no real space if you want to be competitive for breathing, the ability to breathe only one side only. So again, creating that diversity, creating balance in your stroke, and assisting you with your skills. Big subject that comes up often is, what about the inhabitants? There's a lot of fear around some of the inhabitants of the ocean, and to be honest, the amount of people that are swimming nowadays and surfing in the water, I believe we can rationalise it. It's probably more dangerous to be on the roads nowadays than be in the ocean. Simple to say, I understand that, but certainly I've always had a fear of creatures, but over time I've really gotten over that one. Some things to consider: jellyfish. Jellyfish are seasonal. Some of them sting, some of them don't. I did a swim a while ago across the bay, and there were literally thousands of jellyfish on that route. but they were not the dangerous kind. So we're literally swimming between the jellyfish, almost shifting them out of the way with our hands as we swam. There weren't stingers, and it was actually quite an adventure doing that. Really glad I did that. But there are others that do sting. So we need to be aware of what's going on, speak to the locals, look at the signage, understand the seasonal aspects, the wind conditions that bring them in, and be aware and be prepared for them. Potentially wear stinger suits in the dangerous areas, etc. There's always, most waterways, there are fish. Certainly in the ocean we see a lot of rays, a lot of reef fish, and that's one of the bonuses of swimming in open water. It's just getting back to nature. Swimming with fish is just, I don't know, it's really it's so relaxing, and it's great. It's a great experience. On the other side is sea lice and irritants. Whether it be in the seaweed or they get into your suit, or and they create quite a rash and quite stinging. It's more irritation than anything else. Again, normally it's tidal or wind related and seasonal, but again, just being aware they're there. The locals will let you know when they're more prevalent, etc. Again, suits, skin suits can help with that. Algae blooms are occasional in lakes and the ocean. So normally temperature related when the sea or the lake gets too warm. There may be an algae bloom. It's bad. A lot of them are bad for your health, and best not to swim when they're around. Normally councils put up warning signs when they're about, and it's best to avoid them. And then there's what I call the aggressives. That's the one that puts a lot of people off open water swimming. But to me, it's rare. You can rationalise this down. Cars are more dangerous than sharks. Where we swim in Suttons, there may be reef sharks down there. A good mate of mine, Greg Mack, he's got this saying: if the water is salty, there are sharks in it, and he's probably right. But there's never been shark attacks in the bay we swim at, and that's what we look for as open water swimmers, looking for those safe spaces. And if we do these epic swims across bays or long waterways, etc., we can use shark protection, shark barriers, and things like that. Just good to be aware. Again, if you're travelling, speak to the locals, find out what's going on in that area. Maybe get support with watercraft if there is a chance of aggressive being around. But it's like the forest and nature. That's what nature's like. There's always other inhabitants. The other inhabitants around the water is the watercraft. And this is definitely something to be aware of. That's probably my biggest fear in the open water is jet skis. They're the motorcyclists, the off-road motorcyclists of the ocean, and they're always bobbing and weaving and having fun, and they're not always aware of their surroundings. So be aware of fishing craft, surfers, jet skis. Probably scout out the area you're going to swim in. There's normally areas that are frequented by jet skis. Might be segregated areas for swimmers. Stick to those. If there's no segregated areas, just know the frequency, and maybe wear a swim buoy. Pull a swim buoy that's brightly coloured, so you're highly visible to watercraft. If you're an efficient swimmer, you might be not create a lot of splash at all and swim low in the water, and it's pretty hard to see. So make sure you're visible. Wear visible gear. Pull a swim buoy. Maybe swim in groups so you are more visible. But watercraft is probably the biggest danger to open water swimming out of all of them. We link up with our local kayak club when we do the longer open water swims. That creates a good community spirit amongst the boating fraternity and the swimmers, a lot of respect between the two, rather than creating barriers of getting in each other's way. It's a nice way to do it. A couple of training skills in preparation or when you start open water swimming to be aware of, and these are the simple ones, and simple and obvious ones, to be honest. One is orientation and navigation is really important. So the first thing is if the more often you swim in open water, the more familiar you become, and the easier you build up those navigation skills. And my suggestion when you do swim in open water, even if it's at the local beach, make sure you're actually sighting and actually swimming from point to point and not just swimming in a general direction, because you will build up navigational skills by actually swimming point to point and having a target. So it's a good way to build up the skills initially for if you're going to do a race at some point in time. Quite often I see swimmers, they practice in the open water, but they're not really sighting and not really navigating. And then they get to a race where they're swimming buoy to buoy, and they haven't got that skill of actually swimming straight from one buoy to the next. Bilateral and snorkel swimming is a good thing to do. Bilateral swimming really creates balance in your stroke so you can swim straight. Quite often, if you always breathe into one side, we actually develop a skew, and that one side is stronger than the other in terms of pattern. And when we actually get into the open water, we actually swim in a curve and always veering off to one side. So learning to swim bilaterally to create balance in your stroke, maybe doing a fair amount of snorkel swimming, where you're not moving your head or neck around, and creating that balance is a good idea. The good old 20-stroke count blind is a good way to do it. You can do this in the pool, but also do this in the open water. So if you don't sight for 20 strokes and then check your direction, you build up the intuition of what you actually do in the water. So you can do this in the pool, get over the black line, close your eyes, swim towards the other side of the pool. After 20 strokes, if you haven't yet swum into a lane rope, check which way where you're facing, and you'll build up a respect for, or some intuition around what way you tend to turn. You can also do this in the open water. In actual fact, I do this on most of my open water swims, even now that I've got a lot of experience. Early in my swim, I'll do a 20 stroke without sighting. So I'll orientate myself, make sure I know where the buoy or the target I'm swimming towards, swim, take 20 strokes, and then check in to see which way I'm pointing. And again, it tells me on the day, is there sweep, or am I turning to one side? And then I can actually adjust my target, swimming left to the target or right to the target, depending on which way I'm turning. It's just a good way to check in, rather than just checking in every 5 strokes or so and always counterbalancing, but then we're going to be oversighting. Unilateral breathing is really important. As I said, you may have a swim with the wind's coming from one side with a lot of chop and waves, and you can only breathe to the other side. If you've got a strong side and a very weak side, you're going to run into problems. So we really, for open water swimmers, we really work on that ability to breathe on both sides and be able to breathe on unilaterally on each side. Is a really powerful skill to have. Kit is important. Goggles. We get different types of light. We might have one swim where it's relatively it's overcast, a little dull, and clear glasses are going to work for you then. Tinted glasses, you're not going to be able to see much. Likewise, another day the sun might be out. You might be swimming into the sun. And trying to sight with clear glasses is going to be pretty difficult. So having tinted glasses for that occasion is good. The other thing is speed suits, skin suits, wetsuits, depending on are there sea lice in the water or jellyfish. Maybe a skin suit's a good idea. With cold. Wetsuit can be a good idea. Wetsuit is sometimes a good idea for novice swimmers because it gives them that little bit of buoyancy, and it can actually build up their confidence in open water. Where they can get a little bit smoother and be a little bit more confident when on the longer swims. So play around with kit. There are options in open water, more options than in the pool. We need to be depth aware. In the pool we get our comps, we can always see the bottom, the water's clear, we can see the lane ropes, we know what's going on. When you get into open water swimming, I always suggest people start in the shallows where they can see the bottom, and if they get into trouble they can stand up. However, when you get more experience, you get into the deep water swims, and it can be quite disconcerting when you can't see anything. You can't see the bottom of the ocean, you can't see anything either side, and it's just either deep blue or deep green. And it takes some getting used to. You're kind of on your own, and it feels quite disconcerting until you get familiar with it. And once you're familiar with it and you get that confidence, that's actually a great feeling to have. But again, that one is more about familiarity and just knowing being aware that it can be a little scary when you first get into that deeper water. It's all about in open water. It's all about one, familiarity, and two, developing those specific skills that you need for the open water. It's a good idea to work with groups who are familiar with this. If you are starting open water, link up with a group that's been doing it for a while. They can give you some guidance, or link up with a coach who coaches open water swimming. You can get through in 3 or 4 sessions a lot of these skills that you need to know a lot quicker than trying to find them out for yourself. A couple of hints and tips. Once you start getting some experience in the open water, and there's some little tricks that we use to actually keep momentum and keep the flow of open water. First one is double sighting. So what pool swimmers tend to do when they get into the open water is they want to sight because there's no black line, and they'll tend to oversight. And when they oversight, they're looking for their target. They'll almost stop in the water, lift the head right up at the chin, and look until they spot their objective, their target. Then put their head down and start swimming again. They've lost all momentum, the hips and their feet would have dropped, and it's like restarting to swim again. So what we do in open water to keep momentum, we use the double sight technique. What we do to that is literally we only lift our face out of the water just so our eyes just clear the water. So it's really a lift. It's at the beginning of the stroke before we breathe. We just lift, we glance. First time, all we're glancing is the landscape. It's just getting a little bit of an orientation as to more or less where we're pointing towards. Yeah, so it's a landscape check. You kind of know which way you're heading, and then you immediately drop your head down, get it as low back into its neutral position, taking that breath. The next sight, which is immediate, it's the next stroke, is again you're just lifting your eyes above the water. And now you know where you're pointing, so you know where to look for your target, the buoy you're heading towards, or the landmark you're heading towards. Now you've been looking for specifically for that object. And again, as soon as you look, whether you spot it or not, you go straight back into your breath. And then potentially, if you didn't spot your target, you can do it a third time, and now you're looking at a more focused area of the object. So at no point are we actually stopping and lifting our chest or our chin out of the water and stalling in the water. We're keeping rhythm. We're keeping our momentum. We're always moving forward. We just take a couple of glances to navigate. When we do that, what we can do is give a bigger kick since we lift the head a little bit, just to keep that momentum. We may even give a little bit more of a push down rather than straight into the pool, just to support us, particularly if the water's choppy or there's a bit of swell. We also need to time that glance, that look, to make sure it's at the top of a swell. If you're at the bottom of a swell, you're not going to see anything. So again, it is a skill. It is a skill, and it takes some practice to get into. But the main thing is it's all about momentum. It's all about keeping that forward motion, keeping the hips up and the feet near the surface so they don't drop. So we're constantly moving forward, and we don't have to restart that swim from scratch again. The second one is never fight the water. So there's a tendency for novices when the water starts getting a bit rough, a lot of chop in the water, a bit of swell, they can tense up and almost want to fight the water to force themselves through the water. You almost need to do the opposite to that. The rougher it is, the more malleable we need to be. So we still need to be long in the water, but we need to make sure we're still getting that rotation of pulling through the water. So the rougher it is, the more malleable we need to do. So we kind of mold to the water, let the water hold us. We're not trying to actually force the water into a streamlined, stiff position. So think about that when it is a bit rough. Just try to relax that a little bit, but keep length. Point your toes. Make sure you're pushing forward with the arms to get the long stroke. But yeah, be malleable. Let's go with the water. It's a good idea. Another one around navigation is we can start using the features of the sea to actually navigate on the bottom. So if you're swimming in over sand, what you quite often find is these little like sand dunes that form lines on the bottom of the ocean. It'll be in a particular direction, and we can use those to navigate. So if we know we're going heading for our target, our objective, look on the bottom of the ocean. You'll potentially see these rows of little sand dunes. And as long as we keep the angle with those sand dunes as to where we're going, we can actually use that to navigate. Obviously check in, because every now and again the direction of the sand dunes can change depending on the current on the ocean floor. But again, it's just useful in terms of reducing the amount of time, how often we actually sight. You can do the same with seaweed, weed banks. If there's a little bit of current, all the weed will be pointing in a certain direction. And again, as you're swimming, we can use that to assist us to navigate. Drafting is a good idea. You can save 30% of your effort, of your intensity, by drafting, swimming on somebody's feet, or swimming on somebody's hip, or swimming behind a couple of swimmers. They drag you along, they're moving the water, they make it easier for you to go through and can assist. So certainly in races, I'm not a front of pack swimmer, so I'll tend to actually sit on people's feet, because it's just saving so much energy by doing that and get a faster swim. We always need to compensate for sweep or imbalance in open water. There's always, even in lakes, there's always generally a little bit of current. Particularly, if it's a windy day on the surface, the water will be moving. So when we navigate, we don't always just head straight for the target. We'll take that 20 strokes, check in to see which way we're heading, and if we've moved and we're off target, we'll compensate with swimming to the right, so taking into account any sort of current that's pushing us one way, whether it be a tidal flow or something, so we can actually, again, not oversight. We don't want to sight every second stroke. We want to minimize the sighting as much as possible, building intuition as to what's actually happening with the water, what's happening with us. So compensating, it's the same as sailing. There's always a sideward push of the wind. So sailors never point their yacht from A to B. They'll always point the yacht up or down to take into account any tidal sweep or the wind drift that's going to occur with the yacht. The same thing happens with swimmers. So that's it in terms of probably the initial things I'll be looking at for open water swimming. Open water swimming is it's a return to nature. It's adventurous, it's exciting, and it gives us some diversity, as you've seen for some of the elements I've spoken about. It gets us out from that repeatable environment and that known, consistent environment of the pool, and it gets us back to nature. And I love it. I'm swimming at the moment 3 times a week in the ocean. Normally, it's about 50-50 for me, open water versus the pool. But even pool swimmers, if you can get down at least once a week into the open water and just open up, build up that rhythm, be at nature, have a bit of a relax, get a bit of diversity into. Hope this helps. Feel free to contact me if you need some assistance in getting into it. Join up with a group is my recommendation. Find a group, whether it be a social group or a formal open water coaching or camp. It does get you into it a lot quicker and gives you confidence. Familiarity is the key. Doing it often will build up that familiarity. And I hope you enjoy it.